What's going on, y'all? Welcome back to another episode of the BullPen. Today, I got a real special guest for y'all, hailing from God's country, out in Austin, Texas, making his way out here. Guys, I'm stoked about this episode because this is definitely going to be one of the most unique conversations we've ever had on the BullPen. There's no question about it. We just, had a little conversation about what you do and about, this whole thing that you've taken on, which is a massive undergoing, right? It is massive to what you're heading for, what you're trying to do, but it's so important. I mean, it is so crucial, especially what we're experiencing today. So let me just kind of give you guys an idea of who our guest is today. Zack Blakeney. Now, make sure we pronounce that name right. It's Blakeney, not Blakeney for all you guys. Is a consciousness and freedom coach who unplugs ambitious entrepreneurs and executives from the matrix to expand their presence, power, and purpose. He also guides men to heal porn addiction for good while creating a transparent, unified, and loving relationship with their romantic partner. His red pill method, which is a big thing. If you go to his Instagram, you guys will see it. We'll link it all here. The red pill method blends science-based methodology with consciousness, axioms that permanently overcomes limiting beliefs, destructive habits, and creates lasting freedom. Some big scientific words, but let's dive in, man. Zack, thanks for coming on, bro.
Hey, it's my honor. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I appreciate you, man, taking the time, coming out. We had a little bit of a hiccup with the scheduling, but you made it work, and I appreciate that.
Yeah, like I said, you guys have been nothing but generous with the hiccup, man. And again, my internally grateful for you, for having me come out and being able to be here today.
Oh, dude, hey, anyone from God's country, got to take care of them. Because down the South, Southern hospitality, it's real.
Yeah.
Right? That's something I hope I can carry on, teach my kids and everything.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah, I've lived in the Northeast.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
And it's not there.
No.
Not at all.
I've been in Connecticut, and that is the opposite of Southern hospitality.
Yeah, in the South, if you cross somebody on the sidewalk, you say, hello, how's it going? And they go, eyes down, you don't exist.
Yes. Yeah.
It was so weird, actually understanding this, because my entire life, I've pretty much been raised in the Southeast. So having go there and to see the duality of what that is, it gave me a greater appreciation for the South.
Oh, yeah. No, I totally agree, because I actually went from Connecticut to Texas, and there's living in Connecticut and New York, I get the fast-paced life, but chill, people, and then you're down in Texas and everyone's like, how you doing? They're just talking and you're almost caught off guard. You're like, the hell?
Are you talking to me?
I love you people. Okay. All right, Zack. Some serious stuff to talk about, man, right? There's some serious stuff to go into. I mean it when I say this. What you're doing, I think, is so important. Obviously, you feel the same way, right? You kind of made it your life mission. But this is something that is destroying people's lives. And when I say this, there's a lot to uncover here, because you're tackling a lot of different things. You're helping them in their businesses, to grow their businesses, to take on a whole new legacy. You're helping them overcome one of the worst addictions known to mankind. And I mean that, one of the worst addictions known to mankind in so many ways. But brother, tell me, what's your story, man? What led you to this point? Who's Zack Blakeney? Not Blakeney. Blakeney, and I'm getting it wrong even.
Hey, I'll tell you that we're going to start with the worst addiction known to man.
Okay.
And that is porn addiction. And the reason for this is, one, the availability of it. I mean, it's everywhere.
Yeah.
If I want to drink, I need to go and buy some, alcohol from an alcohol store. If I want to get drugs, I need to find a drug dealer.
Right.
If I want to watch porn, I can pull up my phone right now and start watching it.
Right.
Now, this is a problem.
Yeah.
Because not only that, but it's my belief, after also dealing with drug addiction, that pornography addiction creates an emotional cycle, which is the most erratic emotional cycle that you'll experience. So let's go through it for a second, and then I'll actually start talking about my story, because this is going to be it's what I believe is actually the real addiction.
Okay.
It's the addiction to guilt and shame.
Interesting.
Because this is what happens. You feel turned on, sexually aroused.
Okay.
Then you're going to get on the computer. Once you go on the computer, you now start pulling up tabs. Dopamine is firing while you're doing so. You might choose to open up multiple tabs of different scenes of all sorts of different things that you can find in the porn world.
Right.
Again, dopamine, 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 dopamine. Then you choose whatever scene that you want to do the thing you want to do to, and you experience an orgasm, ecstasy. And then right afterwards, you feel guilty for doing so. as if you should have been doing something else, or, hey, I told myself I wasn't going to do this anymore. And then you feel shame.
Yeah.
Because I can't actually follow the words that I say I'm going to do for myself.
Interesting.
So now we're talking. Now this isn't, and this is how I talk about how do we heal guys from porn addiction for good? Because I don't give a crap about the actual addictive behavior. It's the emotional cycle, because you can do the same thing with social media, with video games, with drinking, with alcohol, with drugs, with any of this. Yeah. Just interchange it out, because if you still have this emotional cycle, your identity is going to attach itself to whatever else it can to get the dopamine.
Yeah.
Now let me go into my story.
Okay, yeah, break it down.
When I was 14, this is 2000.
Okay.
So we were just moving from dial-up internet and AOL to broadband. And broadband was this new world where everything goes really fast. And something else happened is that porn started to be thrown onto the internet and video pornography specifically, which is completely different from something you're going to see in a magazine. So 14-year-old kid with his own computer in the basement, no faults in my parents at all. We were just well off enough as a upper middle class white family to have all these things that were nice to have. So I started diving into porn when I was 14.
Okay. Which I think we can all agree, damn near every dude at some point has gone through this. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. And it was so cool to see it clear, because before it was just the fuzzies on Cinemax. Yeah. I was like, whoa, I can actually see what I'm looking at now. Yeah. So I started when I was 14. I'm going to fast forward a little bit to the time I was in college. Okay. Because I was doing this pretty consistently. Sure. Right? So once I got into college, I started to have more opportunities to have sex with women. Mm-hmm. And I was finding that I was struggling doing so. As in, it was a struggle for me to achieve an erection as a 20-year-old. I didn't understand what was happening.
Interesting.
I ended up getting out and starting to figure out, okay, what can I do about this? Because I was also experiencing a lot of anxiety and fear once the first time it happened, right? So now I'm starting to map something into my subconscious that I'm actually afraid of sexual intimacy. So then I start using Viagra, Cialis, again, at a very young
20s.
Age. Yeah, we're talking about in the 20s.
Yeah.
And that worked for a time being, but guess what? As I'm still doing this, I am still watching porn very consistently. And not only that, but every time that I would fail with a woman, it would drive me back to porn, because I had created safety around pornography. I had no problem getting an erection, opening up my laptop and being ready for that. Yeah. I had a problem with actual human connection. So fast forward to when I was 26 or 27, I met my ex-wife. Okay. And at the time, we had such a strong, energetic connection that I actually didn't really have a desire to watch porn during that time. Now I was still using Viagra, Cialis, things like this to actually have sex. Yeah. But it was like for the first 2 years, I was like, she healed me. You know what I mean? I was like, this whole relationship healed me. But what happens after about 2 years in a relationship? Anybody that's been in one for long enough knows that that's where the real work actually gets done. Yeah. The honeymoon phase is over, and it's time to actually look each other in the eye and say, hey, there's some things that you do that I would like for you to improve. Yeah. Hey, and also there's some things that I can improve on, right? And then the work is done to create a lasting relationship. Yeah. Well, that work can't be done if you're hiding a whole portion of yourself. So the way that I describe this now is that love is only genuine when two people are courageous enough to be fully seen, fully heard, to be fully loved. But a lot of times, especially as guys, when it comes to things that we're shameful about, we'll hide it. Right? It's like we're living two lives. Yeah. So if you were to imagine two circles, and then the guy has his circle, but then there's this whole little small circle that he's withholding, and the woman's fully transparent. Not saying that the woman's always this way. I'm just saying in this scenario. Sure. And then the woman falls in love with the projection of the man, not the whole man. So what happens over time? You can't hide the thing from your wife for that long. You live in the same space. Like, you're going to fuck up. Yeah. Right? So that's what happened. Right. She started catching me watching porn. And then also I started to experience what's called porn-induced erectile dysfunction again. And then that created a bigger division. And at this point, I had been telling myself since I was about 25, there was a voice inside of me coming from my heart space saying, you keep saying things to yourself like, what's wrong with you? Are you always going to be this way? Why can't you be like other guys? This voice says, bro, it's the porn. You need to stop watching porn. Yeah. So I had this duality of knowing, but I kept watching it. And I felt out of control of my mind and my body. I had no idea what was going on. Yeah. So once we get into there, me and my ex-wife started having issues. I started diving into drugs. So I'm getting into party drugs, things that are manufacturing happiness, right?
Okay, well, break that down for me then, right?
Sure.
Like, take me through this thought process where you go from porn to drugs. Like,
Well,
what was it that connected those two?
Well, first, I mean, I started smoking marijuana when I was 20, 21.
Sure.
Now, where I sit right now, I still smoke weed occasionally. Like,
Yeah.
I don't see anything wrong with it, but I
Right.
was using it. Again, it's the intention of use to numb myself, right? And that's what it was being intentionally used for. Well, then the pain got so much, and again, I didn't want to admit that I was this, right? I didn't want to admit that I was a porn addict. I didn't want to admit that I was holding all these feelings of inadequacy and shame and guilt. I was just hiding all these things. So because I couldn't face myself, it drove me even further away from things that I needed or what I felt like I needed to manufacture happiness in my life. So then that spiraled us down a whole path, because if anybody has done drugs in that way, especially like MDA and cocaine, you pretty much make yourself willingly bipolar, especially if you're doing it on the weekend all the time.
Yeah.
MDMA is a very powerful drug when it comes to releasing dopamine and serotonin, and then your whole stories are like done for the next 2 or 3 days, where you're kind of like slightly depressed. So I was doing this to myself on a weekend, like go party on the weekend, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, feeling depressed, sad, crying, then back to the drugs, right? And the cycle just continued.
Yeah.
Well, that erratic behavior also contributed to my ex-wife at one point finally saying, hey, if something doesn't change, I'm going to leave. Now, here's the kicker, because here's the actual story of me coming out about my pornography addiction, but I actually say that I was forced out. So my ex-wife had found the porn, right, on my phone. Right. And me and her actually had a business at the time. We were doing health and fitness coaching and bodybuilding coaching together. So we're leaving the gym, and she grabs my hand. She says, I have something to talk to you about. So I was like, well, what? She's like, let's go to the car. So we go to the car. And she gets my phone and she says, I need to show you something. She goes to my in private browsing, which is where I was doing all my shit that I was doing, right? Pulls it up. And by the way, anybody that's listening right now, if you search the same thing over and over again, even in private browsing, it'll save your searches.
Yeah.
So she hits the search bar. These different searches come down. She says, what's this? I said, it wasn't me. She said, this is your phone.
Yeah.
This is who else could it be?
Yeah.
My phone got hacked. Wasn't me. If you don't tell me the truth right now, I'm going to walk out of this car and I'm not going to be with you anymore. My first initial reaction still, it wasn't me.
Really?
Until I started breaking down crying and actually admitting it.
Yeah.
So when I talk about this, I mean, like literally it was forced out of me.
Yeah.
I was given an ultimatum. And it's one ultimatum that I'm grateful for that happened in my life.
Yeah.
Because at that point forward, we had a very tumultuous time. I had to spend Thanksgiving alone. Like I thought she was going to leave. Then she was like, hey, let's start working through this together. I was like, okay. So I went through the process of going to a sex therapist and anxiety therapist, talk about these things. The sex therapist said, you need to go 90 days, nothing, no sex, no jacking off, no porn, no nothing. Now,
So like a cleanse then.
yeah, it's a process in which, again, neuroplasticity allows you to map certain neurons to a reaction, to an action, right? So I had mapped literally being sexually aroused to a computer
Yeah, right.
rather than being sexually aroused to a woman.
Right.
So the 90 days was allowing my brain to rewire itself. Very tough 90 days.
Yeah.
And then after about 120 days, I had sex with my ex-wife for the first time without the use of any pill or anything.
For the first time?
For the first time.
Wow.
No, I had been, like in the first parts of our relationship, I had been able to do so.
Okay, gotcha.
But
But
like,
it'd been a while.
it had been a while.
Gotcha.
Right? And then about 4 months later, she left me.
Wow.
Now, why did she leave me? She left me because there are different map behaviors around addiction that isn't just the addiction. Because when you're addicted to something and you want to hide it, you will lie. You'll manipulate, you'll control the situation so that you don't see my dark little secret. And that's what I did. But guess what? I was so proud, my ego puffed itself up and was like, man, I'm so proud of myself for getting over the addiction, that I was still lying, I was still manipulating, I was still controlling her. And that's ultimately what had her leave. Then I sat in there for about a month with her being gone, and I'm just sitting in straight victim mode, blaming, complaining, blah, 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 blah. Which I always say, guys, bring this with you.
Yeah.
Victimhood has two attributes, blaming and complaining. If you find yourself blaming and complaining about anything, you are literally being victimized by whatever else you're blaming and complaining about. So what happened for me was a month later, I heard a voice inside of me, and it said, what would happen if you took 100% responsibility for what you're blaming and complaining your wife for? I said, I've never done that before. I'm going to try that out. And from that point forward, I consider that a rebirth into me actually creating the life that I truly want to create by just understanding what responsibility is. And I'm not talking about responsibility for your actions. I'm talking about responsibility for your thoughts and your emotions and your reactions and your entire fucking life. It's your responsibility.
Yeah.
So that really shifted me into something that was completely different for me. I really started to become very aware, and I'm a person that's very much like, I can get obsessive about things. So I got obsessed with understanding the brain, understanding what's happening on porn addiction, and like, why is video pornography, which by the way, video pornography and still imagery is completely different.
You've said that now a couple of times.
Sure.
What do you mean by that?
So it was, first of all, I started watching porn when I was in 2000. It wasn't until 2009 or 2010 when scientists actually started doing studies on it and showed that watching video pornography is similar to visualizing something that's happening in your subconscious mind, which your subconscious mind and your conscious mind does not know the difference. Well, I'm sorry, your subconscious mind doesn't know the difference between something you visualize and something you actually experience. So when we're watching this, right, it's registering into the subconscious mind, and there's movement and things are happening, which creates a scene that can be recreated in your mind. Still imagery does not have that effect, not nearly the same effect. So they started finding this out. Like I said, 2010, really 2009, 2010, these studies are coming out and they're talking about this. So I was fucked for 10 years before anybody knew there was a problem. And so were a lot of guys that didn't understand this.
Right.
And you know, what's really revealing about this is the guys that I work with, like when I talk about being addicted for 16 years, there are guys that have been addicted for longer than I have.
True.
And we're also looking at this pandemic, so to speak, happening amongst the Gen Zers, because I wasn't born with a smartphone. I didn't get one until I was like, till 22 or 23.
Yeah.
Now all these little kids have these smartphones at a very young age.
A computer in their fucking pocket.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's a big, big problem. The pornography industry is one of the main contributors to child and sex slavery.
Agreed.
One of the main contributors.
I mean, you know who Tim Ballard is?
I'm not aware of him. No.
You should look him up. Tim Ballard, Operation Underground Railroad. He's been on this podcast. We, work with him in certain ways. He fights child sex slavery all around the world, and that's one of the things he talks about is how the pornification of our world is what creates these kind of issues, because people constantly want more and more and more, and watching, women have sex, is not enough. So they have to go to watching teenagers, and then they want more and more. They keep pushing the limits, and it goes to child pornography. And then we'll even and then that doesn't become enough. So it even pushes them to a level of actually buying the child or paying for the sex in person, that kind of thing.
This is called escalation. This is what this is. It's dopamine escalation. This led me down to watch a lot of things that were way different than just having sex with a woman. I've seen a lot of different things. Even more so, like I started to question my sexuality through the process because I found myself watching gay pornography.
Really?
I'm not gay. I found that out after my remapping of who I was. I love women. So think about this.
Just kind of pushing these limits of trying to find that dopamine hit.
The content doesn't matter. It's just that it's different. And what is different is anything that pops up on the outside of the little screen of all the different scenes of different stuff you can watch. And it's very hard. It was very hard for me to untangle that because, again, for a while I was questioning my sexual identity while I was with my ex-wife. Because I was like, I'm watching gay pornography. I'm also watching like BDSM and like, I watch rape porn, right? Yeah. There's plenty of rapists that say that, hey, why did you become a rapist? Like in the middle of court, and they'll blame porn for it. Yeah. Because the escalation moves from something that's in front.
Someone like Ted Bundy.
Sure.
Talking about porn just being the start, right?
Right. Yeah. So it starts from a place where I'm just in my safe computer to dopamine escalation changes to adrenaline. And adrenaline is where you actually start acting out in the real world what you're discovering in the Matrix, right? Yeah. And then that's where things start to go wrong for people in their lives, where they're so far away from who they actually are. And I mean, we can look at we're talking about porn, but just as a quick relation, look at the news. Yeah. Like,
Yes.
if you like to sit in front of Fox News and just watch Fox News all day, or CNN, or whatever news you choose, you would think the world was going to shit.
Yep.
You have a very terrible view of the world. And
Yeah.
I'm not here to tell you that these things aren't happening. I'm here to tell you that there's 7 billion people in the world, and you're getting a snapshot of the worst on the news.
Yeah.
And that's influencing the fear and the stress and the anxiety that you're experiencing in your life, all because of what you're consuming. It's the same principle.
That's right. Yeah. Well, you know what's fascinating about that is when you look at the news, people blame the news, blame us. You know why? Because they wouldn't put that shit out there if we didn't watch it, if we didn't want it, right? Porn industry wouldn't be an industry if we didn't actually pay their fucking bills, right? It wouldn't be as big as it is. Same with the negativity on CNN or Fox News or whatever it is. It doesn't matter. The negativity that comes out is because that is what gets us this adrenaline rush, gets us enraged, it gets us wanting to watch and share. And it's because if you go into marketing, and you look at marketing strategies, they say putting out a negative message will convert 80 to 90% higher than a positive message. And that to me is where I'm like, wow. From a marketing standpoint, from a profit standpoint, makes sense why we keep pushing it because we keep wanting it. Yeah. So that's what's going to convert better. Well, that makes a lot of sense.
Well, remember, we're addicted to our pain, right? And so, and I'm 100% with you on what you're saying, because what I tell guys when I'm working with the porn industry, I'm like, we have a very unique view on the porn industry. It's not the porn industry's fault. Yeah. It's your fucking choices. Yeah. It's your choices. Right. Like, you can sit here and tell me that, this is this, and you're blaming everything. I'm like, cool, so you're still being victimized. Like, let's start looking at the fact that you are choosing to do so. Exactly. So a big part of this consciousness that I talk about, and this goes around with everybody that I coach, is I tell them, I was like, I'm going to make you very aware of choice points that you never knew that you had. Things that you have then put on program inside of your subconscious that literally you're like, I don't have a choice in this. No. We can open up the entire gambit of your trauma, of your guilt, of your subconscious. Yeah. And I can make you very aware where you're choosing something in which you're essentially choosing your suffering rather than choosing love. Right. Rather than choosing connection. And you feel like you can't, but again, that's the point. When we feel like we're incarcerated inside of our own being, it's because we've allowed the mind and the body to make choices, and they were never meant to make choices. The spirit is what makes the choice. Free will lies in the spirit, right? So we feel incarcerated because the spirit's like, hey, bro, like, you're doing all these things. Remember that voice I was talking about? I was like, hey, bro, like, it's the porn. You're doing all these things, but like, none of this is actually me. So then we feel the pain in our gut, right? Yeah. Which we can associate to emotions of inadequacy, shame, and guilt. But to me, it's just your soul screaming like, hey, bro, why are you doing this to us? Yeah. Because in all actuality, the mind and the body are tools for the soul to navigate experience in the way that the soul wants to. And the soul chooses, and the mind and the body are just informing. Hey, here's something that's happening. Spirit, what do you think about that? Spirit chooses. Mind says, okay, that's cool. Body's saying, hey, something's going over here. What do you think about that? Spirit chooses. Yeah. But again, when we let our subconscious create choices that should not be made, then again, we feel imprisoned. Yeah. And there's no way you can live free if you don't realize that the choice is actually given to the spirit. And the mind is just a tool. Yeah. And I always tell guys, I was like, you wouldn't let a hammer tell you what to do, would you? Because that's what you're doing when you're allowing your mind to do that. Yeah. So I like using analogies that are very like, hey, like, here's eye-opening for you of what you're doing, and here's the truth of the matter. Yeah. But your perceptions are so way off from the truth that you've forgotten your way to it. Yeah.
Well, you know what? I love what you're saying here, right? This is something that really has changed my life, but I know it's also changed a lot of other. Like, this is a message I've heard from the highest levels. I'm talking billionaires talk about this kind of stuff, right? You're talking about the soul, right? And here's the thing. And you go to any sort of culture, they call it the soul, they call it the spirit, they call it intuition. And down south, where good old boys call it your gut instinct, your gut feeling, right? It's all the same thing. It's that eternal wisdom inside you that knows exactly what you need to become at your greatest version of yourself, to become who you're supposed to become. There's something in us that drives us to wake up every morning, that drives us to push through pain, that drives us to want to be better, to want to push, to grow, expand, whether it's land, whether it's business, whether it's personally, whether it's physically, doesn't matter. What is it inside of us that pushes us to be great, to pushes us to be better? right? It's that gut internal instinct, that soul screaming out at you. And the truth is, if everyone could just learn one thing, they wouldn't need a mentor. They wouldn't need a mentor. What mentors do is help you get in tune with one thing. Absolutely. And that is your internal voice, that soul, that God that lives inside you that says, this is who you can become. And these choices are what's fucking it up. And everyone already knows what's wrong with them. Everyone already knows what problems they have if they could just get in tune with listening to what's there and have the courage to follow it. Because I guarantee you've heard that voice over and over and over again, which is why you feel ashamed, or like people feel ashamed on a regular basis because they know better. Yeah. Because they already know better, and every choice they make that goes away from that voice decreases who you are going to become, decreases your opportunity on actually who you are. Mm-hmm. You're not living up to your highest and greatest self and who you can become, that king or queen that lives inside you that's just screaming for you to get there. No, you're choosing these other things that is begging you not to. And that's where I believe that shame, that guilt comes from, because we know we could be better.
Yeah, I mean, you're touching on so much that I want to just like, I'm going to word vomit here. But first of all, yes. So I call this voice the inner guidance system, the IGS. Reason being is because I like to use non-threatening words, because like if I say, it's also the Holy Spirit, it's also intuition. I subscribe to unity consciousness. Sure. It basically just says that like everything that you see is God. Yeah. Right? Meaning that you are a reflection of God. And that voice inside of you is the creator inside of you that's guiding you and trying to get you to live a happy and fulfilled life. Mm-hmm. Right? But then we have the duality of two voices. Yeah. We have, and to some that are in conflict, they feel like they have 10 voices. There's just two. You have your inner guidance system and you have the ego. Mm-hmm. And then if we start breaking down the source and the intention of these two, they're polar opposites. Mm-hmm. The inner guidance system is of love. The ego is of fear. Mm-hmm. It's that simple. Mm-hmm. And then if we start looking at, quote unquote, the children of fear, insecurity, inadequacy, doubt, right? If you can start to trace in your own mind and become aware of what you're thinking, metacognition, think about what you're thinking, creating the observer in your life, you can start to say, wait a second, no, I'm feeling fear. Well, fear is an illusion. Mm-hmm. Fear isn't real. Mm-hmm. Fear is just something that you create. The reason why fear is an illusion is because it's based off personal bias. Mm-hmm. My fiance is afraid of spiders. I'm not afraid of spiders. Mm-hmm. I hate spiders. That automatically makes it an illusion. Yeah. Right? Right. So now I can talk with my guys and tell them this, and like they'll still be choosing it. Right. Right? They just don't know that they are. But if we can start to become aware of that, okay, there's that. Also, the ego's goal is separation. His whole goal is separation. If we look at this entire world right now, and I'm not saying we are making some huge strides into unifying with each other, but the narrative has been separation. Look at COVID. Look at what happened. We were literally forced to be separate from each other. Yeah. And then what happened? Massive amounts of mental health issues because they were forced to look at themselves, and they were forced to look at the things that they regret and that they're guilty about and they're shameful about because there was no other place to go. Yeah. Right. And what I think is what happened is that the narrative, the powers that be wanted this to happen, but what they incidentally did was created a massive awakening of people waking up to the fact that, oh shit, I do have trauma. I do have all these things I've done in my past. How do I fix it? Now, unfortunately, if you want to go back to the Matrix, you can go back to the Matrix and you get antidepressants and anti-anxiety pills. You can do that if you want. Yeah. But that's not going to cure you. No. What's going to cure you is literally having the courage to dive in, right? To who you truly are on the inside. And what I like to tell my guys, anybody I'm coaching, the first thing I say to them, I'm like, hey man, there's nothing wrong with you. Yeah. Like, what do you mean? I just told you about all these different things. I was like, no, this spirit inside of you is perfect, whole, and has everything it needs. Yeah. You've tricked yourself to believe that there's something wrong with you. Yeah. And now we have to start unraveling the tricks. Yeah. And we'll do that. I promise you we'll do that, but it's going to take some time. Yeah. Right? Right. So it's just one of those things to really understand that this inner guidance system is also of love. And then when we look at love, what are the children of love? Well, courage is definitely one of them. Taking action despite fear. Yeah. Right? So we can do that when we start aligning to that voice. And I always tell people, I'm like, look, guys, if you want to actually have focus and what I call singleness of thought and being able to just go the way you want, you have to start looking at the things that are inside of your subconscious that are preventing you from being present. And too many people, men are really bad about doing this. Yeah. Continue to push forward and compound their guilt and shame over time. And this is what we call emotional baggage, right? Where they're trying to sprint as fast as they can, but they're carrying a 50-pound sack on their back and they're just slowly piddling out until they stop. Right. instead of just saying, and this is what I tell guys, the guys that are in the program, which is another, coaching avenue that I'm inside of, I'm like, what would happen if you just took 6 months to put down the sack and then just start sprinting as fast as you can because you have nothing holding you back? You guys are willing to deal with your suffering. You're willing to deal with the pain at the sacrifice of what you believe success is. But what are you doing actually? You're sacrificing yourself for success. And ultimately, once you get there, the thing that you're trying to search for, which is happiness, you've delayed based off the I'll be happy win syndrome. And then you get there and then you realize that, oh, okay, this isn't actually everything I thought it was going to be.
Right.
And a lot of people know about this in the personal development space. A lot of entrepreneurs know about this. This isn't anything new that I'm telling you. You can literally go listen to all these different podcasts. Yeah. But isn't it funny how we can say, oh, yeah, that's right, but then we don't do it?
Yeah.
Because there's a difference between knowing the path and walking the path.
That's right. Most of us know enough already. I've said this before. Most people, in regards to business, know enough already to build a 7, even 8-figure business. Most people already know enough to have a very happy life. You already know it. It's already there. You just have to take action. You just have to have the courage and the little gumption inside you to say, fuck what anyone else says. Fuck whatever, like my own shit's getting in the way. Yeah. It's time to move forward. And then just take action, massive action, as Tony Robbins says, right? Yeah. So, dude, I love that, man. Let me ask you a question. Did you grow up religious?
I did, but I wasn't ever really attached to the religious narrative.
Okay.
So I grew up Catholic.
Sure.
Right. Okay. So first of all, we're talking about a very ritualistic religion. But there was always something intuitively wrong inside of me at this concept of this metaphysical dimension called hell. Because I'm like, wait a second. What you're telling me is that God is forgiving, compassionate, and loving, but you're also telling me that if I don't follow God, that I'm going to go to hell where I'm going to be eternally damned for what I've done. That doesn't make sense. Because here's another thing that we know. Fear controls, love inspires. So what you've done in the religious sense, in my opinion, is that you've created a metaphysical dimension called hell in a sense to try and control somebody to align with God or Jesus. When does that ever work? Ever. All it does is compound the guilt that you have. And if we look at what religion actually teaches compared to an adult, it says that when you sin, you ask for forgiveness. All right, let's switch that. When you make a mistake, what do? You learn from your mistake. Then you learn to forgive yourself. We didn't get the middle part. Yeah. We didn't get the middle part. We got sin, forgiveness. Yeah. Oh, no, there's no actual observing the sin so that I could understand what I did so that I can make a different choice going forward. No, that gets mapped into also at a very young age of who we are. Yeah. So it's a very dangerous thing when we look at actually most religions inside of this space that completely bypass the one thing that helps you understand who you authentically are, which is to be able to extract the lesson from the experience that was a sin and or mistake. So most people don't have that skill. Yeah. And that's what I tell them. I was like, guys, how do you alchemize something you regret into something that you're grateful for? How do you change that? Like, I don't know. It's like, you haven't extracted the lesson. You still regret it. Yeah. Because you can't see how it serves you now. Yeah. So you have to be able to sit in this side of this, and we need to examine this and find out, what was it? I was actually on a call with a client the other day, and we were doing this, and we went through the entire process. First of all, he was telling me how mad he was at his old job and all these other things and stuff like that. And then we go through the whole process, and he realizes he has a lesson, right? Which the lesson basically gave him all the skills that he needs to be successful now. And I'm like, well, why are you mad, bro? Why are you even sitting in regret? He's like, I don't know. I was like, that's the point. It was like all of these mental battles that we're fighting on the outside of our consciousness and our subconscious that we choose to put away are the things that distract you from being present and actually doing the work that needs to be done. Presence is where the magic happens, right? Right. The more present you can be, the more action you can take, right? But the more we allow ourselves to loop ourselves in the past to the future, which I also call the matrix. So there's 3 levels to the matrix: the narrative, the mind, and the body, all keeping the soul imprisoned. And we have to move through all of them for us to understand how to truly be free.
Hence taking the red pill.
And then take the red pill.
I love it. Well, okay, let me ask you this then. There's a lot of people, again, victimization mentality where they blame religion, right? Because religion restricts them, religion does all this kind of stuff, right? But then there's also a flip side of people justifying porn, especially in today's day where porn's normal, porn's natural, right? Porn is being, how do they usually phrase it? Pornography is what's the word I'm looking for? Celebrating our sexualities, or like, or all that sort of thing, right? People. And I think you see it a lot more in Hollywood as well, where, and I don't even want to necessarily put it just on Hollywood. It's a worldwide thing where a justification of where pornography is normal. So there's almost two sides of the coin here that I'm kind of curious your thoughts about. There's a side of justify porn, right? Porn's normal. Porn is natural, right? Because we're very sexual beings, right? There's no reason to feel guilty for it because you take the guilt out of it where there's nothing wrong with it, right? But then there's the other side of religion where it's feel very guilty about it. As a matter of fact, it's a sin and, repent for your sins, going to hell, that sort of thing. So what are your, and so there's almost dichotomy of like two sides of the coin, and there's like this middle ground that you're talking about, the lessons and what's actually really deep inside of it, right? Yeah. Walk me through this side first, because I want to talk to you about religion side, but like, walk me through this side first where people talk about justifying porn as it's natural, as it's normal. And that, again, would take away the guilt you're talking about. Sure. But is that the right move? Is that the right way of thinking about it? Or is that completely off base, in your opinion?
In a sense of maybe taking away right or wrong, I would just say in a sense of, is it serving your happiness or is it not? So that is, to me, the only true judgment that we have in life is actually God inside us, with just that judgment. Is this serving my happiness, my growth, my fulfillment, or is it not? That's the only judgment that we need. Because living free, truly living free, is living life without judgment or concern. Think about all the mental energy you spend, I'm not you, but you, the listener,
right.
judging yourself and judging other people that you could easily turn into creation.
Yeah.
So when I look at what you're talking about here, I would say, well, it's an individualized experience.
Okay.
How is this person handling the experience? Do they see it in a balanced way? And what I mean by that is, have you accepted that porn is something that you actually serves your happiness? Cool. Do you understand, right, that the porn that you're using is actually still serving your happiness? It's not causing any sort of detrimental actions that are happening in your life. And if you can accept it and not judge it, then it won't have the same visceral reaction inside of you, because with acceptance, there is no shame. Why would you be shameful about something that you're accepting, right? And there's a whole group of people that I'm sure are fine in that. Yeah. And that's fine.
Well, I think people, if I don't mean to cut you off here, I think people push for the acceptance nowadays, especially to, to get rid of their guilt. They push for not only acceptance for themselves, but other people's to accept, especially if we're going with this, like pedophilia stuff. Yeah. MAP. You ever heard of MAP? It's something like, it's the new verbiage, something attracted, minor attracted people. Yeah. Instead of calling them pedophiles, let's call them minor attracted people, and let's accept that that's normal, that's okay. Yeah. And so they try to create this acceptance to in a way, hide the guilt, right?
Yeah. So again, I this is just my perception without knowing exactly what's going on. But
no, this is a loaded question I'm giving you.
I will say that from my experience of guys that I have worked with that have had some sort of thing that happened in this way, it is always connected with trauma that they experienced as a child, sexual trauma that they experienced as a child.
Talking about like the MAP.
That's why they like children, because they see the innocence, right? Inside of that, because they had some sort of sexual trauma that happened, that resulted in them not actually, that they're just adults. They're kids in an adult body at this point. Like they haven't gotten over the thought process that they were thinking when they were 7 years old. Think about that for a second. Like how many people right now have something in which they've been thinking since they were 7? So many of us. Because again, we haven't understood that there's something deeper to the experience just yet that's here for us to learn. So when I think about what you just talked about, I think everybody that is in a space that's not there sees that is an immoral thing to do.
Okay.
If you're inside of it, and you accept it inside of that, I would, and if anybody's listening that's actually doing this right now, I would ask you to really look inside, to ask your heart, is this something a loving person would do? Would a loving person want to sleep with a child? Because the child doesn't want to sleep with you. Here's the other part of this. The 11-year-old most likely doesn't want to be with you. This isn't mutual. This is just you having a fantasy.
Yes.
So, show me, and again, there's 7 billion people in the world, so there probably is some child somewhere that's like, oh, I'm 11, I'll do that. If it's not that common, it's probably not actually socially acceptable, because most people that don't have that trauma and actually can sit inside of our heart and say, okay, is this something a loving person would do, and have the response that says no, would have, I believe, more of a clear look on this than somebody that's wrapped up inside of it. Now, again, there are so many different things that are happening right now in a sense of the inside of the sexual community. We have the tranny community, transvestite community, right? Cross-dressing community, stuff like that. I mean, I can even look at them and say, I understand. Like you feel like you are a woman and you are a man and you would like to be a woman. That is totally on you and your prerogative. That's not including anybody else. Cool. If that's what you want to do, I accept you. I love you for what you want to do. As long as you're happy with yourself, awesome.
Yeah.
This other thing involves children, and it's a two-way street. It's a little bit different.
Very much.
Actually, yeah, I was going to say it's a lot different. I'm being really gentle.
Gentle
about
it.
A little bit different.
Right.
It's a huge difference.
Yes.
So
no, I agree. Because when it comes to the transgender community, the whole thing about it is you can absolutely do, absolutely, right? But the truth is as well, when you make decisions, you understand every decision will come with a consequence. And yes, people are not going to accept you. Yeah. Right. Like me cutting my hair like this gets people mad, right? Like me getting a tattoo gets people mad. Decisions have consequences, and what other people choose to say or do is not in your control. What is in your control is your own happiness.
Yeah, absolutely.
Your own happiness is in your own fucking control. When you realize the power that you have to push everything outside of you and just to actually bring that happiness within, then it doesn't matter what you decide to do in life. Yeah. Right? Doesn't matter what you do, because you determine ultimately where your happiness comes from internally. The second you try to push that on other people is the second you're going to get some serious kickback.
Well, now we're talking about forceful.
Exactly.
Right? This is controlling, not inspiring.
Yeah.
Right? So where is it coming from inside of their own mind? So with that, I mean, I've run into a whole community that's a conscious porn community, and what they center around conscious porn community is the fact that, one, it's a husband and a wife. Right, they're sharing and stuff like that, and they know the source of the porn. When we look at the porn industry, and this is something I'm very much open with the guys about this, I was like, you're mostly watching a sex slave. You're a lot of the porn that we find right now, they're not there by choice. They're there by being trafficked and being put on camera and put onto the thing.
Very true.
So then if they have children, I'm like, how would you feel if your daughter was there? Right? So it's about creating some real stark differences inside of their mind, which they can shift their perception to not want to do something. Yeah. Because really they don't want to do it. But again, they keep choosing the suffering. So we have to create some real dualities that allows them to see it in a different light.
Well, break this down for me then, right? Because what brings a lot of guilt is not only, it's an internal guilt, right? It's an internal feeling that we have. But now let's go back to the religion side. Religion in a lot of ways puts boundaries on people's lives, right? These are the commandments, or these are, whatever the religion is, right? These are the rules and regulations of this religion. And as long as you stay within those bounds, you're worthy, right? That's that's pretty much, religion, right? Yeah. So the second people start
free will, right?
Exactly. So the second people start stepping outside those, when they start feeling shame, right? And guilt. So then it comes internally when you start stepping outside of your own morals and principles, and what's dictated to you as what's right and wrong is when you start feeling guilty. Yeah. Right. So where do you find the balance of drawing or do you find a balance, in your opinion, of letting guilt drive you and letting guilt be a good thing based on your morals and principles, or never feeling guilt in a sense of trying to just the internal understanding? Do you know what I'm saying?
I know what you're saying.
Pretty loaded question. This deep stuff we're talking here.
So first of all, the thing that religion has done is they have associated something that is a beautiful expression of love and put shame over it. Sex and shame. Never meant to go together. Not ever. Sex is a energy transfer between two people that love each other, typically. Right. You can also just have a one-night stand if you want to and stuff like that. It's still not going to be as fulfilling as it was if you were someone that you love. So with that, we're looking at emotions. All emotions, there are no bad emotions. But the most powerful transformative emotions are guilt, shame, and love. Why? Because these are on the opposite ends of the spectrum. So many guys want to experience love in their life. Oh, I want to experience love in my life. But you're holding on to shame every single day because you won't fucking own it. And this is a trick of the mind called projection. Yeah. And when we project our guilt out, our mind conceals it from us. So the mind says, I'll project my guilt onto somebody else, right? And then temporarily feels better because I don't have it.
Because they put the responsibility on someone else's shoulders. Yeah.
But it's only temporary, because what happens? You wake up the next day, you feel guilty. Then you project it out, you wake up the next day, you feel guilty. You project it out, you wake up. It's just a constant thing. Right? Well, it's because they don't want to be guilty. Right? They don't want to feel guilty.
Yeah.
They don't want to admit that they feel shameful because the truth of the fact is there's nothing wrong with you. So you have your spirit inside of you saying, hey, I feel these things and I'm not this, but you need to understand why you're feeling it. And they miss that you need to understand why you're feeling it. Right?
So you're breaking down the lesson being the most important piece of the guilt, shame, moral principle, boundaries,
and ownership. Here's an example of projecting out guilt and owning guilt, and it's very subtle. I'm going to use an example that happened between me and my fiance recently. I was working too much. I knew I was working too much. She had told me, she said, hey, babe, I'd really like to spend some time together. I was working too much. I got to the end of the night. I said, hey, baby, I just want to let you know that I felt really guilty about working too much right now, and I really want to spend time with you. And I just want you to know that I would like to be able to sit down and us actually map out how we can do this, and I will listen to you going forward when you're telling me that I'm doing this. I promise you. That's owning my guilt. Here's not owning my guilt. Hey, babe, do you feel like we haven't spent enough time together? Subtle. A different reaction will happen. The first reaction, what I said to her, my fiance was like, yes, baby, I would love that. Let's sit down. Yeah. Thank you for actually acknowledging it, and let's sit down and do it. Second reaction, because I've had this reaction before, not with my ex-wife. Yeah, I've been telling you that for the last 3 weeks. Of course we don't spend enough time together. Like that. This is what I've been trying to say. Yeah. Completely different reaction. Why? Right. Because I owned it. Yeah. And then guess what? I didn't wake up the next day feeling guilty because I was able to express it. So through the expression of guilt, I allowed for understanding, which then allowed for love, which then allowed for a deeper connection. Same thing with shame. But we don't want to do it with shame. Again, we feel shameful. We project it out. How do we project it out? Oh, we look at somebody else that maybe is in our same space. Entrepreneurs just do this all the time. That feels like they've gotten more success than they have. And they say, man, that guy, he's probably not as good as he says he is. He probably stepped on people's toes, probably cheated in some sort of way. Bro, you're just projecting your shame onto him. You're projecting your inadequacy onto him because you feel inadequate, which is all it is. This is all judgment is. Judgment is a misperception of inequality. Because you've judged yourself as being lesser than, you then need to judge somebody else as being lesser than to bring them down to you, rather than seeing the truth, which is that everybody is equal, and that value that everybody is equal in is infinite. That's the truth. But we sit inside of this thing where, again, it's all about owning these things. Own your shame. Yeah. Hey, babe, I've been feeling shameful and inadequate about a certain thing. I would like for to talk to you about that so that I can actually get to an understanding and so that you can really know what's going on with me. What is your wife going to say? Yeah. Thank God. Yeah. I've known for the last, I don't know how many months that something's wrong with you. And I keep asking you what's going on. And you just keep saying, I'm fine. I know the fuck you're not fine. Right? They always know. Yeah. Right? But then every single day we're just living with it in that way. And it's because we're unwilling to face it because we feel like it's darkness because we don't want to be that. Yeah. If you don't want to be that, express it. Yeah. And then you'll release it and you won't have that anymore. So if we look at a bird's eye view of this, let's say anybody that's listening now, for the next 50 years of your life, you only experience guilt and shame 1 year out of the 50 years. That means 49 years of your life, you're actually in clarity, confidence, belief, passion, all these different things. And again, taking that 1 year and spread that over small little instances in that time period, right? Or for the next 50 years, you wake up every single day feeling inadequate and incapable of what you want to achieve, and thusly never get to the point where you want to get to. That's the difference. Yeah. That's why I talk about what I coach is about guiding you to understand and having the skills to achieve success now and long-term success, rather than being so myopically focused on what you need right now, without the realization that what you need is to focus on your fucking self. Because what really is freedom is the ability to fully express ourselves without fear and not care what people think. Yeah. And when you do that, you get to find the beauty and the love and the joy in life because you find your tribe, so to speak. You find your purpose. You find the thing that you're most passionate about. You wake up every single day excited to live in this experience and create whatever it is that your heart desires. But when you can't express yourself fully, that is limited. And that limitation will drag with you for as long as it is.
Let me ask you this. Do you get a lot of hate with this message? Because I'm actually curious about this. Do you get a lot of hate with this message, like talking to people about this and like trying to help, like help people in this way? I feel like that'd be something that, I mean, basically you're pulling back the curtain on people's guilt and shame, being very open with it. I would imagine you're getting a lot of pushback from people. I'm curious your thoughts.
I get different reactions. One of the biggest reactions I get is a judgment of me that I am not as good, quote unquote, as I say that I am. And that's funny because I'm like, all I do is express all the different aspects of who I am. I've told you literally everything I've ever done to these people or anything else, right? It's just that they can't be that for themselves, right? So they project out onto me what they're actually feeling about themselves inside. What it does do is it has a lot of people that are in my life. It opens them up to a whole thought process, a whole way of being that they've never even thought about before. Do I get hated for it? Not as much as you think.
Really?
For those who aren't ready to hear it, they will go away, right? It's like a magnet, right? Two sides of a magnet. Nope, not for me. It'll go away.
Right.
For those in which, because what I know now that I'm speaking to is I'm not speaking to your ego. I'm speaking past your ego. I'm speaking to your spirit.
Yeah.
Your spirit knows. And if you're somebody who is really inclined to say, you know what, that is the truth, then you'll tiptoe in. And then you'll tiptoe out, and then you'll tiptoe a little bit further in, then you'll tiptoe out. There's so many clients that I've had that I had the initial call 6 months ago, and then 6 months later, they're like, okay, bro, I'm ready. Yeah. Because they understand, right? They're like, okay, I call it Inception. Like I Inception them. You ever see the movie Inception? I just plan a thought. Yeah. And then I allow you to heal yourself through this thought, right? And to really blossom inside of that. Yeah,
or at least recognize.
Yeah, recognize and allow this new thought to kind of bubble and do what it does. But for the most part, I get a lot of positive response from it. I get a lot of people that commend me, and I appreciate the honor of saying that I really think it's great that you're talking about these things. Something that you've said to me as well. And I know that in the same way that I just talked about, I'm 100% expressing myself authentically. And I don't care whether you like me or not. I don't care. Yeah. Because what that does for me is that allows me to literally create the entire experience that I want to create. The people that are in my life, I love so dearly. Actually, my entire business, my COO, my assistant coach, my assistant, literally are my family, not like my blood family, but my adopted family. Right. And then it's creating an attraction of like more people coming to the space of who's supposed to be here. Yeah, right. And it's very easy for me to know who's not. Yeah. And a lot of people have faded out of my life, and that's totally okay. Yeah. And all I do is I love them from afar, and I wish them well. That's all I can do. Yeah. So in a sense, yes, I do get some, but for the people that choose to intertangle, it's what true transformation is. Yeah. It's the ability to realize that you aren't your ego, you're not your body, that you are the powerful creator of your experience. And when you take responsibility for that and learn to own that, you'll always see the beauty in life. Yeah.
Well, let me ask you this then. What's the goal? What's the end outcome that you hope for this? Like where are we going to see you in the next 5 to 10 years? What's the red pill going to be like? Like where do you see this going?
So interestingly enough, because this has changed even since I contacted you and we got in front of this. Okay. Because we actually performed something that was completely different, that is more aligned with my soul. So I'm going to get out there and, again, express myself here. And, again, if you choose to listen to it and really attach yourself to this as being true, then great. Yeah. We created an event called Unified Intention. Okay. And inside of this event, we gathered a whole bunch of people together, and we set a unified intention to meditate on universal love and to send love throughout the entire planet. And I have a visualization that's centered around it. And actually, from this whole experience that we've done, so I'm making an audio recording, like a guided meditation for this. So inside of this experience, we had everybody do this. I brought them through a visualization throughout the world. We injected love into like Ukraine and Russia, Canada, different places that we really thought needed it. And when we came out of it, I didn't expect this, but instant healing started happening. There was people in there that were receiving visions. They're receiving visions through their third eye, which is what we were activating inside of that, of remembering who they are, of remembering some trauma that they experienced when they were young. And they were crying, and they were releasing it, and they were doing so in a very safe way. We had other people that were crying because of the fact that literally they were feeling the pain of the world that was coming through that process. And then we had some people that were crying, and they didn't even know why they were crying. Right. They had no idea. Yeah. This is what I know to be true. The original sin, quote unquote, or karma of humanity is separation. Separation is what creates you to feel misunderstood, isolated, alone, which is all not true. And inside of your subconscious, this separation is mapped in there. And by expanding out our heart center and truly desiring with intention to connect with other people, to connect with the world, they subsequently healed themselves. And they felt more open. They felt like they could be themselves in a more authentic expression. So what I just talked about is something that we're now doing every single month. We're going to be live streaming it. I've had people reach out to me. They were like, hey, I'd like to be a part of this, but I'm not in Austin. We want to create it into chapters. We want to create the vision that I see is millions and millions of people all together meditating on universal love and healing this planet and healing the people inside of it. Now that is a big goal inside of there.
Yeah.
On the side, which is something that I'm still doing. Like I just talked about something right here that literally only took 2 hours to make. Right?
Yeah.
So what I do with the rest of my time, I want to help men get free. I want them to understand that they do not have to live and hide in suffering because hiding only prolongs the pain. This is a beautiful life. Hell isn't a metaphysical dimension that you're going to go to afterwards. It can be on earth right now if you choose it. You can also choose love. You can also choose to be courageous. You can also choose to give to others. This is something that is the most is the deepest calling that we feel as humans, is to help serve others. And if I can help others unlock their own gifts inside of it, to really understand that they're powerful and that they're here for a reason, and the purpose inside of them is to literally spread the love that they feel, and love being spread through business. Right. Love and understanding is just, all businesses are just love and understanding. You just want to be loved and understood, and you're trying to love and understand. That's it.
Yeah.
That's going to be the most beautiful thing I can do. So with that, I've already started speaking on stages. I'm grateful enough to be on podcasts right here.
Glad you came out.
The message that I'm sending out in here is the message that's been crystallized, and it's going everywhere.
Yeah.
In hopes, right, that every other person, men and even women, we work with couples in a sense of this because we want to help the woman understand what the man is going through to detach her identity from that process. So it's helping anybody that we can find the love within them, align with it, and live a beautiful life.
Yeah.
But again, you got to go through your own suffering first.
Yeah.
I love Tony Robbins. I love him. The man is, without a doubt, he was the inspiration of me getting into what I'm doing. Without a doubt, has made the most impact on the entire world. But the clips that you see of him are deceiving. Because like on social media, you can have a beautiful life, and everybody's like, well, I want a beautiful life. And then they look at their life, they're like, I can't be Tony Robbins. He's got millions of dollars, billions of dollars, and all this thing. How do I do it? You got to go through your own suffering first. You go through your own shame and guilt to get out of it. The only way out is through.
Yeah.
So you have to turn inward, find the truth, and then you can express yourself because you know the truth. And then once you can do that, I promise you, dude, like scarcity goes away, stress goes away, anxiety goes away. It just fades away. And I'm not saying that I don't experience those things now. I'm also not saying I don't experience shame and guilt now. Again, you will always experience shame and guilt for the rest of your life because in health, they're there for you for a reason. Yeah. If you fucked up, you're going to feel guilty. Just own the guilt.
Right.
Don't blame everybody else for your fuck up. Say, you know what, man, I said I was going to do this and I messed up, and that was my fault.
Yeah.
Let me adjust that for you. If you feel shame, own your shame, right? And then you can say, hey, I really feel inadequate in this space right now. And there's something that's really, I just want to talk about it so that you can help me and other self can help me understand, that I'm not inadequate. That is just my brain fucking with me. That's it.
I love it.
That's all. Really the biggest thing is like, I just want everybody to be courageous enough to express themselves authentically and live free. And if we could just do that, again, everything that you think is wrong with you, you'll find out was just a huge illusion.
That's a fire, man. That's a big task, but I know you're up for it, bro.
Yeah.
You don't get to where you've been because, listen, the hardest thing to go through is going through those internal demons, right? Yeah. Those are a lot more difficult than the external ones. I don't care what anyone says. And if you've had the courage and strength to fight through those kind of demons, I know you got the courage and the strength to fight through the demons that are going to come for you, stopping you from that. But man, you're the man for the job, bro. Listen, man, spit some fire on this podcast. What's the best way people can get a hold of you right now? Obviously, you're on Instagram, right? Zack Blakeney, right, on Instagram. We're going to link all this in the bio. Do you have a website? Do you have podcasts? Any other way people can get in touch with you?
I've got a lot of different avenues.
Okay.
Zack Blakeney on pretty much all social outlets.
Okay. TikTok as well.
Yep. Me and my fiance have a podcast called The Fit Couple Show.
Okay.
In which we do together. Me and my COO have a podcast called Invincible Intelligence that we do together.
Okay. You got plenty,
So everything that we talked about, you'll find a lot of that in Invincible Intelligence.
Okay.
Fit Couple Show is more fitness-based, mindset, stuff like that as well. When it comes to, www.theredpillmethod.com, you can find out everything you want to find out about the red pill. But pretty much everything I just laid out here, if you're courageous enough to go through this, if you're tired of regret, if you're tired of feeling shameful, you're tired of the guilt in your life and you don't know how to get out, check it out. And even then, send me a DM on any of the platforms. Send me a DM Red Pill, and I know that you're coming from this podcast. And I don't, even if you have a question, like, I'm here to serve you. So anything, feel free to reach out.
I love it, man. Everyone go hit up this guy, Zack Blakeney. We're going to put all these links in the bio. Brother, coming from God's country out in Texas. Thanks for coming on the bullpen, brother.
Absolutely,
it's great
brother.
to have you.
Thank you, Jeremiah.